We've got some pretty massive news to take a look at here today involving the New York Rangers and the upcoming NHL trade deadline, as right now we don't really know what this team is going to decide to do. Are they going to be buyers, sellers, or possibly look to do a bit of both? All those options still seem like they're on the table possibly, and whether or not some of those are right for this team as of right now and kind of where this organization stands, while, maybe let's say, for example, buying and especially rentals probably is not the best idea for this team with where they're at right now. Yes, they've had some great playoff success in the past, but let's be honest here with where this team is at right now and with the way they've been playing so far this season. They're not looking like an elite kind of true top tier Stanley Cup contender. So if we're being honest, going after a bunch of rentals probably is not the right idea, but obviously, they still could possibly decide to go after a couple, which, may not be the right idea, but it definitely is still possible. So we're going to take a look at some news and really kind of breaks things down here on what the Rangers ultimately decide to do at this upcoming trade deadline. So let's get right into it here and start off by taking a look at what Vince Mercogliano, a very reputable New York Rangers reporter, had to say on the upcoming deadline for the team. He said, quote, "Two league sources who spoke to Loha.com, part of the USA Today network, on the condition of anonymity, indicated that the next 2 weeks, during which the Rangers will play a dizzying stretch of 7 games in 12 days, which starts on Saturday, may influence team president Chris Drury's approach." He also said Drury's strategy can't solely be based on such a small sample size, though with 55 games played and months of information gathering already factoring into the plan, that's why many around the league believe he may try to thread the needle and do a little bit of both. And I have been kind of talking a bit about this in previous videos here, where I do think these upcoming games before the trade deadline are going to be a bit of a factor in possibly what this team could ultimately decide to do. Now, should it be the ultimate kind of deciding factor? No. But if this team does go 2-5 or 1-6 compared to 6-1 or 5-2 or 7-0 or whatever, that could really maybe shift things a little bit. Now, it may not have the biggest factor, but let's say you go 2-5 and a bunch of the teams around you are winning a bunch of their games and are really starting to pile on the points there, where this team, like the Rangers, for example, let's say, are starting to fall back a bit before the deadline, then maybe you really do have to kind of, and maybe you're forced a bit to kind of go down a certain path, even though maybe you didn't want to. So that's where I kind of think that, no, it really shouldn't have an ultimate deciding factor, these 7 games in between, but I think it is going to and probably will have a bit of a factor, because if you really do kind of fall off or really seem ahead, maybe that could ultimately kind of shift your kind of focus on certain players and kind of what you want to add. So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, hypotheticals and kind of speculation, all that kind of stuff there from me, but that's just kind of my opinion and kind of thoughts on these upcoming kind of 7 games here, or 6 games now, I guess, in between the face-off and the deadlines. And Vince also did have something pretty interesting to say there at the end of that paragraph, where I guess from what he's kind of heard around the league from people, that they believe the Rangers may look to do a little bit of both, buying and selling, which I think could make a lot of sense for this team with where they're at right now. Trading away some expiring contracts like, let's say, a Ryan Lindgren and a Riley Smith. You get back in a couple draft picks. You open up 2 roster spots. Maybe you call up, let's say, a Brennan Othmann to take the spot of Riley Smith there somewhere in that kind of top 9. You can play left wing and right wing, which is obviously nice. So you call up a nice young prospect there who's tearing things up now in the AHL. He's been on fire goal scoring wise. Trade away a guy like Ryan Lindgren as well. Trade away 2 expiring contracts for a couple picks there, who obviously guys you were probably not going to re-sign anyways. And then maybe you go out there and buy low a little bit on a decent kind of veteran defenseman, or a kind of third line center, possibly something like that. Just kind of add in a little bit and kind of help this team out a bit, while also doing a bit of selling and adding in a bit of draft capital, whether it's trading away guys like Jimmy Vesey, Zach Jones, Riley Smith, Lindgren, whoever it is. Maybe a Kreider somehow gets in the mix there for a trade. Probably not, but there's just some options out there for this team to do a bit of buying and a bit of selling. And with the Rangers having a projected about $15 million in cap space available by the trade deadline, it would make a lot of sense for this Rangers team to use some of that cap space and absorb some salary, maybe in a 3-team trade, to kind of, do what a lot of rebuilding teams do and kind of, add on like a 4th-round pick or a 3rd-round pick by absorbing some salary, on a certain player, let's say, or whatever it is, to kind of help facilitate a trade. Maybe that's helping a contending team, but it could be the right idea for this Rangers squad to kind of help facilitate a trade if it's needed and add in a nice draft pick there, while only using some of the cap space that they're going to have, quite a bit available. They're not going to be able to use up, more than likely, all this available cap space, especially if you are trading away guys like a Riley Smith and or a Ryan Lindgren and all that kind of stuff there. You're really not going to be able to use up all that cap space. So using some of that up to pretty much bring in a free draft pick, I think would be a very smart idea for this front office, who, has used up a lot of their assets over the past few deadlines and in the off seasons, where, they've gone after a lot of rentals in the past and have definitely used up a lot of their assets, going after guys like Tarasenko and obviously Kane and Andrew Kopp way back. So there have been a lot of moves that have happened, even in the last deadline, going after guys like Wenberg and Roslovic and Ruhwedel. That eats up a lot of draft capital and prospects and stuff like that. So I think adding in some picks and prospects at this deadline would not be a bad idea at all to kind of replenish what they've given up a lot of over the past few seasons. And I think with some of the moves that we have seen in the past, recently, obviously with the Kakko trade and getting rid of Barclay Gaudreau and Jacob Trouba and some of these kind of previous kind of core players, or at least were hoped to be core players, those kind of guys moving on from him, I think that's pretty big here. I think this team is really trying to go in a different direction, which I think is important because we have seen for quite a few seasons now, and I talked about this in the past, where we just kind of saw, the same core kind of just going at it every single playoff run, right? It was the same kind of group of players, and they just could clearly not get it done. You had the kind of star guy, Adam Fox, in the back end with not a ton of help around him, and some solid players for sure. Good defenseman, but not another kind of really good one like a lot of other contending teams do have. Then on the forwards, you obviously have some very good talented players, but a lot of guys who just couldn't quite show up in the biggest moments, like Zibanejad and, Panarin and some other players as well at moments. So I think with what this team has tried to do by, shifting focus onto different players and moving in a different direction with guys like JT Miller and, Lafreniere and Cooley and these kind of young guys coming up now, and a lot of the great prospects that are going to be coming through as well, I'm hoping we'll get some serious opportunity, and that kind of starts by maybe trading away a guy like a Riley Smith and calling up someone like a Brendan Hoffman, who really has been on fire since coming back from his injury. Getting him some meaningful games as well down the stretch here, trying to compete for the playoffs, I think could be a really good thing for this team. So figuring out a way to get him up here, and Brett Berard as well. I mean, they've both been really good. So I think if you can get both those guys up, that'd be phenomenal. But at least one of them definitely need to get that call at some point in the very near future, in my opinion. But I think overall, with where this team is at, looking more towards the future at this upcoming trade deadline instead of looking at the kind of now, I think makes a lot more sense for this whole entire organization going forward. But we'll have to wait and see what the ultimate decision is from Chris Drury in this front office, kind of what they decide to do at the end of the day. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And also, if you haven't already, definitely do comment down below your thoughts on today's video. What do you want to see this Rangers team do at this upcoming trade deadline? What are your thoughts on this Vince Mercogliano article and kind of what he had to say here and kind of the news that he has involved in the situation? Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.